Here's Bryan Hayes from the field at Skydome to talk about a Game 2 loss for the Toronto Blue Jays. Hazy, just a week ago we were talking about how unstoppable this team was. 34 runs in 4 games against the Yankees. They were a juggernaut. Now they haven't scored a run beyond the second inning in either game of this series. The bullpen gives up 5 runs Monday. How surprising has the first 2 games been for you?
Yeah, very surprising considering what you just said, Jay. Life comes at you fast, and in the ALCS, life comes at you really fast if you're the Toronto Blue Jays, because not even a week ago, 2 days ago, they were on top of the world. Everything was breaking their way. They looked and felt invincible, and then 2 days later, they're down 0-2 flying back to Seattle trying to figure out exactly what happened. And the offense is at the forefront of this clearly. They were slugging out of control against the New York Yankees, and they just simply cannot do it against Seattle. They cannot slug. They cannot hit for extra bases. Outside of that George Springer home run, the first pitch you saw in Game 1, they can't hit any home runs. And Seattle is doing the complete opposite of that. Everything is leaving the park. Everything sounds loud off the bats of the Seattle Mariners. And I would look at Vladdy Guerrero Jr. at the forefront of this. Again, you asked me how surprising it is. 2 days ago, this guy, again, was the king of this city. He was the king of the country. He was on top of the world. He had one of the great 4-game series you're ever going to see. He doesn't have a hit through 2 games. And the first 3 times he came up to play tonight, there were runners on. He had a chance to break the game open, maybe break the series open for the Blue Jays, and he simply couldn't do it. And John Schneider in the bullpen, coming off that bullpen game, Game 4 in New York, they were riding high. They were kings of the county. And now everything Schneider's doing is being questioned, and anytime he goes to the bullpen, they simply cannot get them out of jams. So it has turned quickly here, and the Jays now fly to Seattle. It's a long flight. They got to figure this out because, luckily for them, it's not a best 2 out of 3 like it had been in the past with wild card, issues that they've had in past years. It's no longer a best 3 out of 5 like it was in the divisional series. You're down 0-2, but Seattle's got to get to 4. So the Jays have got to figure this out quickly.
It would be almost impossible to replicate the success that Trey Yesavage had in his postseason debut, taking a no-hitter into the 6th inning. But what did you make of the rookie's performance on Monday as the Jays starter?
Well, I thought he got burned in the first inning, right? The first batter he faced tonight, he thought he struck him out. And obviously, that didn't materialize, and then ends up leaving the mound after the first inning down 3-0. And obviously, it was not the same performance he had when we saw him a week ago, where he struck out 11 batters. He couldn't get as much swing and miss tonight against Seattle. But I think to his credit, after that first inning, he did battle. But I had no issue with John Schneider deciding to take him out when he took him out. It just was not going to be reasonable to expect Yesavage to do the exact same thing he did the first time we saw him. This is the championship series. This is the playoffs. This is Seattle. And albeit they had not seen him before either, at some point a lineup like this was going to hit him. And he got hit tonight, and he needed some relief, right? When they went to the bullpen, he needed Louis Varland to get him out of that jam, and Varland simply couldn't do it. And Jorge Polanco has been killing this team through 2 games, and obviously he got Varland, and Yesavage had to chew on a couple of runs there when he came out of the game. But it's been a whirlwind for him. It's been a roller coaster for Yesavage. He's still a really young guy. He's still really, really raw. And even though, again, it was a bit of a jam job early in the game for him, I thought he battled. I thought he gave them what he could. But unlike a week ago where I didn't think it was the right play to pull him when Schneider pulled him, it was the right play tonight. He was getting hit. His velocity was down. They were chasing the game. It was a completely different scenario. And if you're Yesavage and you're the Jays, you hope you get to see him back on the mound later in this series.
This series now shifts to Seattle, as you alluded to, Brian. Wednesday, it'll be Shane Bieber on the mound for the Toronto Blue Jays. The Mariners will counter with George Kirby. What does Toronto have to do to make this a series?
Well, I think it starts with Shane Bieber, right? The bats have to come alive. That goes without saying. They have to score runs throughout the game, and I think it would be imperative for them to do what they did against the Yankees and get on the board quickly. Right, you're up to bat first now when you get to Seattle. Get runs on the board immediately and have Seattle chase the game, which hasn't really been happening through 2 games here in Toronto. So the bats have to come alive. But if they don't, it's going to be imperative that Bieber pitches a gem. And obviously he didn't do that when we saw him in Game 3 against the Yankees. I wouldn't say he owes his teammates a much better performance, but I would expect a much better performance out of Shane Bieber. So I think it starts with him. The bats are going to have to come alive. They're going to have to start scoring runs early in this game, and they have to start slugging, like I said off the top. They've got to start hitting doubles, triples, home runs. They've got to start producing some runs because this Seattle lineup is deep. They're talented. They have confidence. They've got quality arms. And they're a team of destiny, too, right? They came hot down the stretch to take the AL West. You saw that Game 5 against Detroit goes to 15 innings. They have mojo right now. So if you're the Blue Jays, you're flying to Seattle, and you got to find a way to steal that mojo back. Again, it's only 0-2. And credit the Blue Jays because they've been a very pesky team all season long. When you doubt them, they come back storming. And earlier this year, they went to Seattle. They swept that series. They're hoping to do the same thing, come back to Toronto. If that happens, you're up 3-2 and could be a closeout for the Jays when they come back to the Dome.
Yes, and the Jays, unfortunately, are fighting history, too. Teams are 3-25 all time when they lose the first 2 home games in a best-of-7 series. Let's see if the Jays can buck that trend. This, ladies and gentlemen, from the field at Skydome, is our Bryan Hayes.